Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. AMC Stock today actually did freaking amazing. AMC Stock currently up about 17 cents or about 4%. There's a reason for this. Now, we'll go over the reason why AMC Stock is doing quite well. I mean, massively outperforming the S&P and the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq down about 1.75%, the S&P down about 1%. AMC stock is a true outperformer today. Now, what's going on is we had softer than expected ISM prices paid and ISM service PMI. That's good for the service side of inflation that has been running hot. The problem is tomorrow morning, and we'll go over that a little bit later into this video, but the services coming in on the weaker side caused 10-year treasury yields to fall about 7 basis points. That's really good for small, mid-cap, interest rate sensitive names, in which AMC is, I guess, the epitome of that, of small cap interest rate sensitive. If the Fed can lower rates more or sooner, then that's really going to help out AMC stock. And that is the reason I believe why AMC stock is in the green today. You can also make the assumption that AMC stock is trading at very low, I guess, valuations. I put that in air quotes because everyone values a company differently. Some people use, price to sales, price to earnings, price to EBITDA, free cash flow metrics. There's a bunch of different ways that you can value companies. With that being said, if the Fed lowers rates, that's good for any kind of which way you want to value AMC, right? So that's the reason why AMC is outperforming, and you can make the argument that AMC stock should probably be higher anyways than it is today, especially if we don't get dilution. And how it sounded on the earnings call was that Adam Aron may dilute us the next day after earnings, like pretty shortly after earnings. That so far has not happened. So I would say that is a positive as well for AMC stock. And every day we go without dilution, I think is good for AMC. I think Adam Aron, AMC, they realize, they kind of know they can't dilute shareholders when the stock is, $4 and some change. Because if they do, AMC stock's going to $2, and then it's going to be really hard to get AMC stock higher at that point. That's just not a scenario you want to be in when you have a lot of debt coming due. Now, here today and after hours, we will have a couple stocks reporting earnings that are notable. CrowdStrike, ChargePoint, Ross, Nordstrom, Box, Couchbase, Bionano Genomics, and Acquisitive. Out of these stocks, Ross can be an important one for retail. CrowdStrike, ChargePoint for their own respective industries. Ross is the only one that even looks attractive to try to trade on earnings. But nonetheless, not the most important earnings. We kind of already have an idea of what these earnings could look like. Now, coming on Thursday, that's going to be your big day for earnings. You're going to get some companies pre-market, but that's really not that important. Thursday and after hours, it's Broadcom, Costco, Marvel, DocuSign, MongoDB, Samsara, Petrobras, Gap, and Runway. Out of these names, Broadcom and Marvel are definitely the important guys. They're the ones that have run up a lot due to the whole AI hype or hopium that is out there in the markets right now. Broadcom is currently down almost 4% today. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but if they fall heading into Thursday, if tomorrow's also a rough day for your AI stocks, then maybe Broadcom can actually rally after earnings. But Broadcom is up huge, big time over the past 12 months. So to get a little bit of a reset there would be good news. On that note, if we do get AI stocks coming down, that can lead to a broadening out of our markets. And I would suspect that is a reason why AMC stock is also doing better today. Because, some stocks are just doing better. Like, look at the Russell 2000. The Russell has been climbing today. The Russell 2000 is only down 0.35%. The thing might go positive here in the last, few minutes of trading. Just depending on how things go. The Nasdaq is down 1.55%, S&P is down almost 1%, and the Dow is down almost 1%. You're definitely seeing some money leaving big tech and your AI names and going into your small cap names. Now, tomorrow is really the, I guess, make it or break it moment for our markets. Take a look at the economic calendar for tomorrow. You are going to get Jerome Powell at 10 o'clock in the morning. There will be a written statement coming out that he gives to Congress. So we're going to get the headlines on that. Algorithms are going to react to that written statement. Also, at 10 o'clock in the morning, we're going to get JOLTS job openings. Now, Powell's going to be a multi-hour event. I believe he testifies in front of Congress for about 2 hours or so. I could be wrong there. Roughly about 2 hours. And if he gives us any kind of insight or heads up or hints to policy or changes, that's what the markets are going to react to. Now, unfortunately, we're not really set up in a good position today. Believe it or not, usually if stocks sell off into a Powell event or jobs report or CPI, that's usually better than not, because that means maybe you can get a reversal, right? Same is true if the markets rally into some kind of event, large event. You can get a downside reaction, more than likely, right? But today you're actually seeing something very interesting, because services did come in a little bit light. Nothing to really rejoice about, but they came in a little bit on the light side. So what happened? Well, as I've talked about a couple times here on the channel, the markets were pricing in 3 rate cuts for 2024 for a while now. The last, couple of weeks, call it the last month or so. And that's been good, because we went from pricing in 7 rate cuts in the start of 2024 to pricing in 3 rate cuts. So that's fantastic. I mean, the Fed had said they were going to do 3 rate cuts, right? The whole time, 2 to 3 rate cuts was priced in from the dot plot. And I mean, that means that if the Fed is ultimately right and the markets are wrong, then that means, stocks are probably in a better position to handle that. If we're only pricing in 3 rate cuts and stocks are still at all-time highs, that's good news, right? Going from 7 to 3, stocks staying at all-time highs, that's good news. You would expect some downside off of that. The problem with today is you are seeing stocks decline, but you went from pricing in 3 rate cuts to pricing in 4 rate cuts. Now, if Powell tomorrow says, we're going to have to cut rates less, perhaps, because inflation just went higher last month and they're not confident inflation is, conquered. Yeah, that's where we have a problem, because you were pricing in 3, now you're pricing in 4. So if the Fed says, yeah, we may not cut rates at all this year, that could be kind of a black swan-like event for our markets. If that were to happen, something along those lines, then I would expect more concentration back into AI stocks, maybe, and selling of small and mid-cap stocks. It is always a possible outcome that we just get a broad market kind of washout. Let's be honest, at this point, should the S&P 500 be where it is, at all-time highs, you, again, have went from pricing in 7 rate cuts to pricing in 3 rate cuts. That gave markets no downside at all. So yeah, I don't think we're set up in an optimal position heading into Powell, because, again, you're seeing stocks fall today, which normally would be good, but you're actually seeing the rate cut odds or probabilities going from pricing in 3 rate cuts to pricing in 4 rate cuts. So pricing in a more aggressive Fed, when recently you have seen inflation actually spiking again, and odds are you get a more hawkish Fed. If the Fed was previously expecting 2 to 3 rate cuts in 2024, I don't think the Fed's going to come out tomorrow and give us an indication of more than that. If anything, base case scenario, the Fed gives us an indication of 2 to 3 rate cuts. Worst case scenario, the Fed says we may not cut rates. Or maybe the most likely scenario is we may cut rates once, but we're not pressured to do so. We just went from pricing 3 to pricing in 4. That could very well be, to some degree, a mini black swan event. It's something that is possible, or maybe a gray swan event would be the right word. It's possible, and it's possible that Powell could say that, but it's not really expected. Expect the unexpected when it comes to Powell. I think also asset prices, the way things are kind of bubbling up, is to some degree counterintuitive to the Fed's fight of inflation. That's okay if assets are doing well when inflation continues to fall. But if inflation starts to spike and stocks are ripping to all-time highs, maybe Powell looks at that like we have a little bit of a problem. Okay, so those are some of the risks that I see out there heading into tomorrow. I don't think the markets are priced for Powell to say one rate cut or no rate cuts in 2024, right? He's obviously going to say he's data dependent, but if he gives us anything more than that, I think that could be a big problem for the markets. And again, if Powell reiterates 2 to 3 rate cuts, maybe it's slightly negative, but not a huge deal. Maybe you do see money go into other areas of the markets, like small and mid-cap stocks, as the markets get ready for that first rate cut. Now, here on the day today, if we take a look at StockTwits, people are pretty bullish on AMC stock. Not as bullish as yesterday. You were at 55. Today, you're at 54. So a little bit less bearish, a little bit less bullish, but definitely not bad at all. Message volume yesterday was at 47. Now it's at 49. So that's definitely getting higher a little bit today. And participation ratio is at 55. So a lot of people talking about AMC stock today. And, just given what AMC is doing, I mean, take a look at the stock. It's still up 2.5%, heading into even here the last later parts of the day. 50-day moving average, that's going to be the important level. Whether or not we break out above that, that could give you a lot more upside. If you break above $4.70 or so, you could rally to $6.50, right? That's your next major moving average, and that would likely serve as resistance. So you could be looking at some big upside if you break that 50-day moving average. More than likely, in my personal opinion, you could probably fall back down to about $4 per share. That's my base case assumption coming over the next couple of days, maybe even tomorrow. Hell, we could see a really bad day if Powell wants to really reset market expectations. He can do so. And keep in mind, Powell has said very clearly he would rather go into a recession than to have inflation stay, higher for longer or get entrenched into the economy. And, maybe just maybe the Fed wants to kind of bat down expectations. We'll have to wait and see. If we take a look at the Stocko tracker data, as I said in the last video, you have more option activity coming on to this week's expiration, but next week is really going to be the big week for AMC. You got about 4,300 calls currently in the money for next week, 243,000 calls out the money. In the money puts at about 31,000, out the money puts at about 108,000. Now, next week's also going to be a big period for AI stocks as well, because on Tuesday you have ARM's lockup period that will be expiring. So SoftBank is allowed to sell their ARM position. A reason why ARM has, went up so much and stayed up is because only 10% of the float's actually trading hands. So, after March 12th, SoftBank can sell as much as they want. Even if they sell 1% of their position, 1%, that would be about 9.2 million shares. That would be almost the average daily volume in just selling pressure. You've been averaging around 15 million shares trading hands every day for ARM. Yeah, that's a freaking big number, right? For a very small amount of selling of their position. If ARM were to sell 10%, that would be about 92 million shares. That would essentially be double the float that's trading now. The float that's trading now is about 94 million. So you could see how even ARM SoftBank just selling a fraction of their position, a half of 1% of their position, would be 4.5 million shares that, would be sold. Let's say ARM theoretically, or SoftBank, I keep doing that. Let's say SoftBank sells half of 1% of their ARM position. that would be 4.5 million shares. Today, I mean, so far, you've only traded about 6.8 million shares. Yesterday, you traded 14 million shares. The day before, 9.8 million. The day before, 10 million. The day before that, 9.6 million. Even if SoftBank sold half of 1% of their position, it would be half of the trading volume you've seen on February 28th and basically every day, right? So, yeah, that's a big problem. ARM stock is going to collapse. The question is not, does SoftBank sell ARM? It's how much of ARM does SoftBank sell? And relative to the volume that we see now, yeah, either which way you put it, ARM is going to collapse. And that's going to be a big problem for Broadcom, for NVIDIA, for SMCI, for AMD, for Intel, for Dell coming next week. And I think that does take a little bit of air out of this AI bubble, at least momentarily. So that's another risk to be watching for. A quick overview of the Ortex data, and we'll let you guys get on with your day. You do have today one order totaling $23,000, positive order value of 100% from hedge funds and institutions. Now, if you take a look at the total volume, 85.86% calls and 14.17% puts, over 5 times as many calls being bought today than puts. That's a great number, showing a lot of people pretty dang bullish in AMC, wanting some upside exposure in the options market. Short interest percentage of free float, 12.9%, $146 million currently in short positions in AMC. Days to cover, 2.07, 33.81 million shares that are currently sold short. Shares out on loan, 44.26 million. Cost to borrow, 1.07%. Utilization, 65.45%. And a short score of 67.28 out of 100. So decent numbers here as well. But again, the biggest thing that's going to kind of move AMC stock and move the markets is coming tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. 7 o'clock if you are on the West Coast, 7 a.m. You definitely want to be waking up for that. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think about this information down below in the comment section. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.